It was the moment I realized I'd been played. I walked into my house, expecting another quiet evening. Instead, I was hit with a bombshell. Madison, the woman I'd been supporting for over a year, emotionally and financially, was packing her things. She didn't look up when I entered. She didn't say a word. I just stood there, watching her throw her clothes into bags like they were nothing. Like I meant nothing. You know, this isn't what I thought would happen. You really thought I was going to stay after everything she said with a half smile. Barely any emotion behind it. That was the moment I realized how little I mattered. She was leaving, but I wasn't going to beg. No, I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. I wasn't going to beg, cry, or try to change her mind. Instead, I walked out. But not before I made a promise to myself. You see, this wasn't just a breakup. This was something deeper. And Madison had no idea what was coming next. You won't believe what happened next. Hey, I'm Alex Carter. I'm 30 years old, and I work as a project manager in construction. I'm not rich, but I'm comfortable. I live in a 3-bedroom house in a good neighborhood that I bought with my own 2 hands. No inheritance, no trust fund, just hard work. I started as a laborer right out of high school. Worked my ass off, went to community college at night, and worked my way up the ladder. I don't expect anyone to feel sorry for me, but I'm proud of how far I've come. Then came Madison. She walked into my life when I least expected it. Beautiful, intelligent, ambitious, a real catch. Right. She was 24, working part-time at a boutique in town. She was struggling living with roommates, driving an old car, and always talking about how she wanted more. Her dreams were big, and I believed in them. I thought we were a team. But I was wrong. I didn't realize it at the time. But she wasn't in this for love. She was in it for what I could provide. She saw me as an opportunity, and that's exactly what I became. And when I found out, I didn't just lose my girlfriend. I lost everything I thought I knew about trust and loyalty. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Before we dive into what happened next, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated with the rest of this story. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens. Madison and I started out like any other couple. She was sweet, funny, and seemed so full of potential. It wasn't love at first sight, but something about her drew me in. She had that spark, the kind of energy that makes you believe in something bigger than yourself. I was 30, settled in my career, and it felt like we could build something. She was 24, full of ambition, and her dreams were contagious. So, I believed in us. The first few months were like any other relationship dinners out. Trips to the movies, and spending late nights talking about our future. At least, that's what I thought it was. I was working hard, building my career, paying my dues, and I helped her too. She was working part-time at a boutique in Cherry Creek, just scraping by. I remember the first time she mentioned how much she hated her job. "I can't do this forever," she said, looking frustrated, her fingers absent-mindedly running over the hem of her shirt. "I need to make real money. But school's so expensive, I can't afford it, and my parents won't help." I didn't think twice about it. Maybe I was just too naive. But I offered to help her with school. I told her I'd pay for her MBA, that I'd cover the tuition in the moment. It seemed like the right thing to do. She kissed me, and we fell into each other's arms. I thought I was investing in our future. She was over the moon, I thought. This was what couples did for each other. Right? We helped each other, supported each other. I was doing my part, and she was doing hers, or so I thought. She started the program, and everything changed. She needed more. A new laptop for school, $1,800. Professional clothes for presentations, $3,200. A car that didn't scream struggling student for the campus parking lot, $20,000. I co-signed a lease for a brand new 2022 Honda CR-V. Her old car was falling apart, and I didn't want her to look out of place. I wanted her to succeed. But slowly, I began to notice something. She wasn't just relying on me for the big things. She was relying on me for everything. Every meal, every date, every night we spent together. She didn't contribute financially at all, not once. I was the one picking up the check. I was the one buying groceries, paying rent, covering her car payments, and footing the bill for things that I had no reason to pay for. It was exhausting, but I didn't complain. I loved her. At least, that's what I thought. But then there were the little things, the complaints, the way she turned her nose up at the cheap groceries I bought. Why can't we get organic stuff? This isn't even healthy. She'd sigh dramatically whenever I cooked a meal from the simple list of ingredients I could afford. I'm too stressed to cook. Can't we just go out tonight? It started as an occasional request, but soon it became a demand, and I was happy to oblige. She deserved the best, right? But that's when the cracks started showing. The more I gave, the more she took. She started rearranging my living room without asking, redecorating with things I didn't even know I needed. Over $4,000 worth of furniture and decor money I had worked for was now part of the new us. When I asked about it, she snapped. The house needs a woman's touch. You're just being controlling. I thought nothing of it at first. I chalked it up to her stress, her school, the pressures she was under. I kept telling myself it would all pay off once she graduated. Once she got that job and we built our future together. But things weren't adding up. I wasn't getting what I expected, and I wasn't even sure what I was hoping for anymore. She'd come home late from study groups, her stories about Liam becoming more frequent. Liam, this guy from her class, had become a fixture in our conversations. She'd talk about his brilliant business ideas, how successful he was, how much money he was making. He owned a digital marketing consultancy. He had clients like Pepsi and Nike. He drove a BMW. I had a stable job, a steady paycheck, and a house. But somehow I felt like I wasn't measuring up. Liam wasn't just a name anymore. He was the standard I couldn't live up to. She was obsessed with him, with everything he was doing, with everything I wasn't. And I started noticing the subtle changes. She started dressing differently. More sexy, more flashy. She would wear tight dresses and high heels to study groups, something I hadn't seen her do before. She'd tell me, "It's for networking," but I was blind. I didn't see the red flags. I thought she was just focused on her career. I thought she was just ambitious. But the more I looked, the more I realized she wasn't just trying to build a career. She was trying to build a new life. And it didn't include me. The cracks in our relationship were no longer subtle. They had become undeniable. But I kept convincing myself that it was just a rough patch. After all, she was under a lot of pressure with her MBA, and I was just being paranoid. Right, wrong. As the months went on, the tension between Madison and me grew. The little things that once seemed like quirks became major issues. She began to complain about everything from the food I bought to the way I spent my time. The more I gave, the more she seemed to expect. Like there was no limit to what I should be doing for her. She'd snap if I bought something she didn't approve of. A bottle of wine she didn't like. A cheap dinner at home instead of going to some fancy restaurant. Every little thing became a point of contention. The more I bent over backward, the more I realized how little she actually appreciated it. And then there was Liam. I started to feel it in my gut, but I refused to acknowledge it at first. The constant mentions of Liam weren't casual anymore. She wasn't just talking about him in passing. She was talking about him like he was the only person in the world who truly understood her. Like she was entranced by everything he did, everything he represented. It wasn't long before the study groups turned into late nights. Networking events that Madison would attend without me. She'd come home after midnight, glowing with excitement, recounting how she'd met this high-profile business person or that entrepreneur. Liam was the one who was apparently showing her the ropes. Liam was the one who had connections. I remember one night. I tried to push back. I thought we were a team. Madison, why don't you want me there? I could help. Her response was dismissive. It's a student-only event. You wouldn't understand. Besides, it's not really your scene. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just looking for success. She was looking for an escape. She didn't see me as part of her future. She saw me as a stepping stone, a way to get ahead. But she didn't need me anymore. Not when she had someone like Liam to latch onto. And then came the nights I dreaded. The nights when she'd start dressing up more than usual for networking. Short skirts, high heels, low-cut tops. Outfits that were way too flashy for a casual study session. She wasn't just trying to impress Liam with her ideas anymore. She was trying to impress him. Period. It stung. I didn't say anything at first. I didn't want to sound paranoid. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't imagining things. The way she talked about him, the way she looked at him, it wasn't just admiration. It was something deeper. She was infatuated with him, and I was just the guy who paid for everything. At first, I thought it was just an infatuation, that once she graduated, things would go back to normal. But then the real shift happened. Madison started pulling away from me. The late nights, the distance, the lack of intimacy, those things became routine. I tried to chalk it up to her stress. I convinced myself that it was just the MBA program wearing her down. She kept telling me, "I'm so tired. Jake, I don't have the energy for anything right now. I'll make it up to you once I'm done with school." I kept believing her. But what I didn't know was that she wasn't tired from school. She was tired from lying. Tired from juggling the lies she was telling me and the truth she was living with Liam. And that's when it happened. The moment that I couldn't deny it anymore. Madison came home one evening, looking more anxious than I'd ever seen her. Her eyes were downcast, her body stiff as she stood by the door. I had just gotten back from work, tired, but happy to see her. Then she said the words that would change everything, "Jake. We need to talk." My stomach dropped, and my heart clenched. I knew exactly what was coming. Every guy knows that line. Every guy knows that it means their world is about to come crashing down. "We need to break up," she said, almost too calmly. "I've been seeing someone else. I'm in love with Liam. I'm leaving you. It felt like I'd been punched in the chest. My mind raced, but all I could do was stand there, numb, trying to process the words coming out of her mouth. The same woman I'd sacrificed so much for. The same woman I'd been supporting for over a year was leaving me for someone else. For Liam, I see, I said, my voice steady, though inside I felt like I was shattering. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to ask her to stay. I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. She started packing, and I just stood there. She had already made up her mind. I wasn't going to stop her. But the truth was, I wasn't mad. I wasn't even sad. Not yet. I was just done. I walked out of the room, my mind already racing. There was something I needed to do. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I wasn't going to let her destroy everything we had, everything I'd given her. Without facing the consequences, I didn't know what to feel in that moment. It wasn't anger, not yet anyway. It wasn't sadness either. No. It was something deeper, something I couldn't quite name at first. I stood in that living room, watching Madison gather her things, watching her act as though it was just another casual breakup. No apology, no regret. Just a flat declaration of how she was in love with someone else. And it hit me I wasn't even mad at her. I was mad at myself. I had worked so hard for everything. I had sacrificed so much for her, my time, my money, my energy, and she had just thrown it all away for a guy who barely knew her, who probably wasn't even worth it. I thought she was the one. I thought this was real. But in the end, I was just a stepping stone. As Madison packed her things, I could feel that pit in my stomach deepening. But something inside of me clicked. No more pity. No more feeling sorry for myself. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Not without consequences. I took a deep breath and walked out of the room. I needed to think. I needed to get my head on straight. Because what I was about to do was going to be calculated. And it needed to be perfect. I spent the next few hours sitting on the couch, going over everything that had happened. I replayed the last year in my mind, the way she'd slowly pulled away, the way she'd become more obsessed with Liam, her constant lies, the little ways she manipulated me. She wasn't just leaving me. She was taking everything I had given her, my trust, my money, my time, and tossing it all aside like it never mattered. But I had a plan. It wasn't about revenge out of spite. It wasn't about trying to make her suffer. It was about regaining control of my life. I'd given her everything. And now it was time to take back what was mine. First, I made a list of everything I had been paying for. Her MBA tuition, $42,000. A good chunk of that I'd already paid. Her car lease, $420 a month. Her car insurance, $180. Her phone bill, $85. And then there were the groceries, utilities, and the rent I was covering for her. I had been paying for almost everything. And she hadn't contributed a single dime. I called the financial aid office first. I told them I was no longer willing to pay for Madison's tuition. As the third-party guarantor, I had the right to withdraw. No more summer or fall semester payments. They told me it would take 48 hours to process. But that was fine. It was done. I wasn't going to let her walk away with my money. Next, I called my credit card companies. I'd added her as an authorized user on my card's big mistake. I removed her from both accounts immediately. She wouldn't be using my credit anymore. I didn't stop there. I called my car insurance company and removed her from my policy. She was driving the CRV that I had co-signed for. But if she wasn't living with me anymore, she needed to get her own insurance. Then I called my cell phone provider and removed her line from my family plan. If she wanted to stay in touch with Liam, she could get her own damn phone. After that, I went through everything. I changed all the passwords she might know: Netflix, Amazon Prime, Spotify, Hulu, everything. If she wanted her entertainment, she and Liam could pay for it themselves. But the real kicker, the thing that would hurt her the most, I knew she'd left behind a ton of clothes. Designer clothes, Lululemon, the expensive winter boots I bought her for Christmas. All the things I had bought her over the past year. I packed up everything into garbage bags. Designer jeans, tops, dresses, everything. I drove straight to Goodwill and donated it all. I made sure to get receipts for the tax write-off. Let her try to come back and get her stuff. She'd have to shop at a thrift store now. The last step of my plan was changing the locks. I had a locksmith come over and change every single lock in the house. It cost me $240, but it was worth it for the peace of mind. When Madison came back to pick up the rest of her things, I was ready. I watched from my bedroom window as she pulled up in that beat-up BMW 328i with Liam. He was the last person I wanted to see. She tried her key in the front door. It didn't work. "Hey, Jake," she said awkwardly when I opened the door. "This is Liam." I shook his hand without saying a word. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of a fight. Madison tried to open the door again. "My key doesn't work," she said, clearly frustrated. "Yeah," I said flatly. "I changed the locks." Her face fell. "What? Why would you do that?" "Because you don't live here anymore," I told her. "You're not my girlfriend. You're his now." She stood there for a moment, looking confused. I could see Liam shifting uncomfortably in the background, not sure what to say. Madison was speechless, and it felt like sweet justice. I pointed to the box of her stuff by the door. "Your makeup is in there. The clothes you left behind donated them." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't just do that." "I can, and I did." She demanded her jewelry next. The $1 $500 Cartier bracelet, the Tiffany necklace. But I wasn't having it. I had already returned the jewelry. She was furious. Liam, looking uncomfortable, suggested they just leave. And they did. Madison shot me a glare as she walked out. But there was nothing she could say. It was over. She had no more claim on me. No more claim on my life. But I wasn't done. I still had one last step in my plan. It wasn't enough to just cut her off financially. It wasn't enough to take back what she'd stolen from me, my money, my trust, my time. No. I had to make sure she understood the consequences of her actions. I wasn't just doing this to hurt her. I was doing this because she needed to learn. And I wasn't going to be the one to rescue her anymore. After Madison left, I couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened. The lies, the manipulation, the betrayal. But there was one thing I hadn't done yet, one final piece of the puzzle. I needed to show her who she was really dealing with. I wasn't just some guy she could use. I wasn't the guy who would beg for her back, or cry, or try to convince her that we were meant to be. I was the guy who would make sure she faced the music. I spent the next few days compiling everything. I had all the evidence I needed, everything she had said, everything she had done. And then, it clicked. If I could expose Liam for the fraud he was, it would hurt Madison in a way she wouldn't expect. She thought she had traded up. She thought she had found someone better. Well, it was time to show her that the guy she thought was perfect was nothing more than a liar. I did what I knew best. I started digging. As a project manager, I had access to professional networks, databases, things most people didn't have. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. Liam was a fraud. I started with his so-called consulting business. The company he bragged about, the one that was supposedly doing business with huge clients like Pepsi and Nike. It didn't even exist. His LLC was just a shell, no clients, no income, no business licenses. He was a guy who talked a big game but had nothing to show for it. But that wasn't all. I dug deeper and found court records showing that he had a child support warrant for over $12,000. He hadn't paid a dime, and he was actively dodging his responsibilities. On top of that, he had multiple debts, credit card balances in the tens of thousands, a judgment for unpaid rent, and even photos of the woman he had fathered a child with. I was sitting on a gold mine, and I knew exactly what to do with it. I created an anonymous email account and compiled everything I had, court documents, employment records, photos of Liam's child support issue, proof of his fake business. I wasn't doing this out of spite. I was doing it because Madison needed to see the truth. She needed to realize that she had thrown away everything for a guy who wasn't even close to being the person he claimed to be. I hit send and sat back. The next morning, my phone rang. I didn't even need to check the caller ID. I knew it was Madison. She was hysterical. "Jake, I messed up. I messed up so bad." She cried into the phone. "Liam's not who he said he was. He's broke. He lied to me about everything. He has a kid. He's thousands in debt. I can't believe I left you for him." I stayed calm. I had a choice now. I could rub it in her face. I could call her out for every lie. But that wouldn't do me any good. She had already humiliated herself. She was already paying the price. "So, what are you going to do now?" I asked, my voice steady. "I don't know. Jake, I don't know what to do. I don't have anywhere to go." "He kicked me out," she said, her voice cracking. "I'm sleeping in my car. Please, I know I messed up. But can I just stay with you? I'll make it up to you." I swear, I almost laughed. She thought she could just waltz back into my life. But I had already made up my mind. I wasn't going to help her. Not this time. "No, Madison, you made your choice," I said, the words coming out colder than I expected. "You left me for him. Now you're stuck with the consequences. Don't think for a second that I'm going to bail you out." She was silent for a moment, the realization sinking in. Then came the desperation. "Jake, please." I was wrong. I admit it. I was stupid. I thought I could do better, but I was wrong. "Please, I have nowhere else to go. I don't know what to do anymore." It was almost painful to hear her beg, but I didn't care. "You should have thought about that before you made the choice to leave me for him," I said, my voice unwavering. "You wanted excitement. You wanted something more. Now, you're getting exactly what you deserve." Her voice trembled. "I'll do anything. I'll I'll pay you back. I'll get a job. I'll sign a contract. Whatever you want. Just please let me come back. I could feel the anger rise in my chest, but I kept it under control. This was the moment. The moment she realized she was no longer the one holding the power. Madison, you don't get to decide how this ends. You don't get to come back into my life just because you're desperate. You're not going to use me again. I won't let you. The line went dead, and I could feel the weight of it lift off my shoulders. It was done. I had taken my power back, and I wasn't going to let her destroy me anymore. It didn't take long for the consequences to hit Madison, and when they did, they came crashing down all at once. I hadn't heard from her for a couple of days after our conversation. I wasn't expecting her to call back, not after the way I'd shut her down. But I knew it was only a matter of time before reality set in for her. What I hadn't anticipated was how quickly everything would spiral out of control. Madison wasn't used to having nothing. She had been living in a bubble, cushioned by my support. And now, with Liam turning out to be just as fake as she was left to pick up the pieces, and she didn't know how to do it. The phone rang again. This time, it wasn't her desperate pleading voice, but her mother's. "Jake," she said, her voice stern but pleading. "You need to help Madison. She's a mess right now. She's your responsibility. You can't just leave her like this. She's confused. She made a mistake. Please. She's our baby girl." I felt my blood boil at her words. How quickly they had shifted the blame to me. How quickly they had ignored what Madison had done and tried to make it sound like I was the villain. "Mrs. Walker," I said, keeping my voice calm but firm. "Madison is an adult. She made her own choices. She's not my responsibility anymore. I don't owe her anything." There was silence on the other end of the line. I could feel her disbelief through the phone, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to be manipulated into feeling guilty for something that wasn't my fault. "She's just confused." Her mother tried again, her tone softening. She was under so much pressure. "She doesn't know what to do. Maybe she should have thought of that before she decided to cheat on me and then move on to someone else." I snapped. "I'm not going to be the one to save her. Not after what she did." I hung up before she could respond, my frustration boiling over. I couldn't believe this was happening. Her family didn't even see the problem. They didn't care that Madison had lied to me for months, used me, and then tossed me aside for a guy who wasn't even worth a second glance. No. They just wanted me to fix things for her. As if I owed her. That's when it all started. Madison's social media war. At first, I ignored it. I figured it was just her way of venting, of making herself feel like the victim. But when I started getting tagged in posts, when I started seeing the lies she was telling, I knew I couldn't let it slide. She painted me as the villain. She claimed that I was controlling, that I had used money to manipulate her, that I had cut her off out of spite. The post was long, dramatic, and designed to make me look like the bad guy. But she had no idea what she was doing. At first, the sympathy poured in. A lot of people bought her story. A lot of people didn't know the full truth. But as the days went on, cracks began to form in her story. Our mutual friends started to ask questions. "Wait, didn't she cheat on him?" my buddy Chris asked in the comments. Another friend chimed in. "How is cheating on someone complicated?" It didn't take long for the tide to turn. her followers started questioning her. Some of her friends, the ones who actually knew the full story, began to speak up. Ashley, a friend of hers from the boutique, commented, "We all knew you were using Jake. Glad he finally wised up." The comments came flooding in, each one more brutal than the last. Madison's post quickly became the talk of the town, but not in the way she had hoped. People weren't siding with her anymore. They were roasting her, exposing her lies for everyone to see. She deleted the post within hours, but the damage was done. Screenshots had been taken. The truth was out there now. I wasn't the bad guy. I wasn't the villain in her story. She was. And then came the GoFundMe. I could hardly believe it when I saw it. Help me finish my education, with a sob story about how I had cut her off and destroyed her future out of spite. She claimed that I was wealthy and vengeful, that I had taken everything from her just because I was mad. I didn't even flinch. I knew what she was doing. She was hoping for sympathy. She was hoping people would throw money at her to fix her mistakes. But once again, she miscalculated. The GoFundMe raised only $430 in 3 weeks. And that wasn't from people who truly cared. It was from strangers who had no idea what had really happened. But the truth started coming out in the comments. People began sharing the real story, telling anyone who would listen that Madison wasn't the victim she claimed to be. One comment said it all: she's not a victim. She's a user. Jake deserves better. We all knew she was taking advantage of him. It was humiliating for her. Her GoFundMe turned into a public roasting session, and it felt good. But the real cherry on top came when I decided to take matters into my own hands. I called some people I knew through work. I ran background checks on Liam just out of curiosity at first. What I found made my stomach turn. He had a criminal record. He was in debt up to his ears, and he had been lying about everything. I had court records, employment termination papers, and even pictures of his child support case. He was exactly the kind of guy Madison had fallen for. A fake, a fraud, and so I did what any reasonable person would do. I sent everything to her anonymously, of course. I didn't even need to say anything. All I needed to do was expose him for the liar he was. I didn't expect it to be over just yet. But I knew that after this, she would have nowhere left to hide. Everything came crashing down, just like I knew it would. Madison was desperate now. Desperate and completely broken. After everything I did, she had no choice but to face the consequences of her actions. But the best part, she still couldn't fully admit that she had been the one to destroy it all. She still hadn't truly understood that her choices were hers to own. It started with a phone call. "Jake, please. I know I messed up. Please, just let me explain," she begged, sounding so pitiful, so weak. It almost made me sick. I don't have anywhere else to go. I was wrong. I was stupid. I thought Liam could give me everything. But he's nothing. He lied to me. Jake, I'm so sorry. The apology was almost too little, too late. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I'd heard enough of her excuses. The damage had already been done. She couldn't erase the months of manipulation, the lies, and the way she'd used me for her own gain. "Madison," I said, keeping my voice steady, "you don't get to come back into my life just because things didn't work out with Liam. You made your choice, and now you have to live with it." There was silence on the other end of the phone. Then in a voice barely above a whisper. She said, "Please, I'll do anything. I'll pay you back. I swear, I'll work hard, get a job, I'll make it up to you. Please, just let me stay with you." I could hear her desperation. I could feel the weight of her words, but I wasn't going to give in. Not this time. I don't need your apology. I don't need you to make things right. You had your chance. You threw it away. I replied, feeling the finality of it settle in. You want to fix things. Fix yourself. But don't think you're coming back to me. The line went quiet. She didn't say another word. I don't think she could. The realization had finally hit her. She had no one left to turn to. Liam, the guy she thought was the answer to all her problems, had turned out to be a lie. And now, she was facing the harsh truth she had nothing. But the story didn't end there. No, that would have been too simple. She had made one final mistake before all of this one that I couldn't ignore. The truth came out. Not just about Liam, but about her whole facade. Her desperate attempts to play the victim had backfired in a way she couldn't have imagined. The lies, the GoFundMe, the posts, it all exploded in her face. I wasn't the one who needed to apologize anymore. I wasn't the one who had destroyed a good thing. I had been the one trying to fix something that had already been broken beyond repair. For a long time, I questioned what I should do next. I had to face the reality that, in trying to help Madison, I'd given too much of myself away. But as the weeks passed, I started to understand something important. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my own life, my own future. In the end, I didn't need her. I didn't need to prove anything to her or anyone else. The truth was clear now. I had spent my time focused on the wrong person, trying to save someone who wasn't worth saving. And here I was, standing taller than I had in months. Free from her manipulation, free from the lies, and free from the guilt I had been carrying for so long. Looking back, I can see now just how much of myself I had given up in that relationship. How much I had sacrificed for someone who never truly valued me. I'd been so focused on doing the right thing, on being the good guy, that I forgot about taking care of myself. Madison wasn't the only one who had learned something. I learned too. I learned that I don't have to be someone's safety net. I don't have to carry their burdens while they sit back and take advantage. I'm not responsible for fixing someone else's mistakes, especially when they've shown they won't do the same for me. And that's where the lesson lies. Right, knowing when to walk away, knowing when you've done enough, and that it's time to take back what's yours. We all deserve respect, honesty, and trust in relationships. When those things are gone, it's time to move on. Thanks for sticking with me through this story. If you've learned anything from my experience, it's that you can't let anyone use you. If someone shows you who they really are, believe them. And never, ever let them take away your dignity. If you've been through something similar, or if you're just reflecting on your own relationships, leave a comment below. I want to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. You're not alone. Remember, sometimes walking away is the best thing you can do for yourself.